So what's up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So Vegito. Vegito was a concept that Akira Toriyama actually came up with on the fly, which is really interesting considering how well executed it was. He actually admitted himself that the Potara fusions were sort of an afterthought. Knowing that, it's actually really cool what he did. He didn't just take two characters and put them together for fan service purposes alone. He actually did something really creative and cool with Vegito. And of course, a lot of the reason that I appreciate this a lot is because I am a huge Journey to the West fan, and everything that Akira Toriyama does from the time that Vegeta becomes Majin Vegeta to Vegito, you could tell that Akira Toriyama was very Journey to the West brained at the time, because it's extremely similar to what happens to Sun Wukong when he faces the evil version of himself, the six-eared macaque. Now, we all know that Vegeta's reasoning for becoming Majin Vegeta is because his pride essentially wouldn't let him accept that he had been surpassed by Goku. Essentially, Vegeta had so much pride in his identity that he would not allow himself to essentially accept the fact that he had been surpassed by Goku, and he feels as though him not being who he was before is what is holding him back from being able to defeat Goku, because Vegeta, as I've established in previous videos, was raised to believe in a certain set of principles due to the fact that the Super Saiyan legend was centered around being a ruthless, merciless killer. So Vegeta was raised in a society where you're essentially encouraged to be a ruthless, prideful killer. So that's the reason he's sort of trying to embrace who he used to be, because that's what his pride is completely centered around. The entire reason that Vegeta was okay with Planet Vegeta being wiped out, the entire reason that he wiped out Nappa instantly, and the entire reason he announces to Kaba that there's no room in the universe for a prideless Saiyan is because he has pride in what his conception of what a Saiyan should be. And if he doesn't fit that standard, it actually drives him nuts. We see this multiple times throughout the series. Now, a lot of people don't know this because it's not common knowledge, but this is a direct reference to when Sun Wukong fought the six-eared macaque, a past version of himself. And the reason it's extremely blatant here is because the six-eared macaque was a representation of Sun Wukong's ego, which we all know Vegeta is an ego-themed character, and they play on Vegeta being a representation of the six-eared macaque multiple times in the series. But to be more specific, he represents, in this case, his pride in his identity as a person. And what Sun Wukong really had to face is his pride in who he was. The six-eared macaque, the way he's characterized, he wanted to make the journey to the West on his own so he could take all the credit for delivering the sutras to the West and then be worshipped as a god. And he also wanted to be the king of essentially everything. He wanted to be immortal. He wanted to be worshipped. He wanted to be the most powerful being in the universe. He wanted to dethrone the Jade Emperor. And he wanted to be the Monkey King in the sense that he wanted to be the king of everything. So that is essentially the character traits that Sun Wukong had to face about himself in the story. A literal manifestation of that aspect of his personality. He used to be a ruthless killer who enjoyed killing everything around him. Like, he legitimately enjoyed it. And he ends up converting to Buddhism and becoming a Buddhist martial artist, which is the entire reason that Goku and Vegeta are characterized the way they are, is because they're just two halves, the yin and the yang, of Sun Wukong's personality, and two halves of his character development split into two different characters. That's who Goku and Vegeta are. Now, at the end of Sun Wukong's exchange with himself, the six-eared macaque, the entire point of this exchange is to have Sun Wukong destroy himself and recreate himself from scratch, which we've seen them play on in Dragon Ball multiple times now, in the form of accepting who he is by nature, and combining it with his new nature that he has developed as a result of hanging out with Tripitaka and going on the journey to the West. So that scene where you see Vegeta embracing Trunks and embracing his identity as an Earthling, that is very impactful in that sense. That is Akira Toriyama's extremely creative and clever way of playing on what happened here in Journey to the West. And all that is very important to take note of in reference to Vegito. Now, the reason that's important is because it's essentially something that they play on very heavily with Vegeta's character in Dragon Ball Z and in Super whenever he fuses with Goku. So Goku and Vegeta in that sense are very similar metaphorically and literally to what happens with Sun Wukong when he accepts who he is by nature and merges with his old self, destroys himself and recreates himself from scratch by taking both aspects of his personality and putting them together to become the victorious fighting Buddha. That's essentially what Toriyama is referencing here. Now, if you have any doubts that Akira Toriyama was Journey to the West brained when he was thinking about everything going on with Vegito, I have news for you. I have evidence that yes, he was in fact very, very much thinking about Journey to the West when he was doing these scenes. So there is a scene in Journey to the West where Sun Wukong gets turned into a pill of immortality. He then destroys his opponent from the inside after he eats this pill of immortality. And this particular version of the scene is from Monkey Magic, a show that Akira Toriyama had already referenced previously through this Gohan picture where he's wearing the outfit from Monkey Magic. So we know for a fact that he's seen Monkey Magic, and that's likely where he's getting this scene with Vegito, where he becomes candy and then just absolutely wrecks Boo. So yes, Akira Toriyama was very, very purposely, consciously thinking about all this in reference to Journey to the West, because he purposely made Goku and Vegeta a representation of not only two psychological aspects of martial arts that are heavily discussed, but those two aspects of our personality that are heavily discussed in martial arts, Sun Wukong and Tripitaka are a representation of. And so Akira Toriyama is just up to date and very educated on the philosophy and the mythology and things of that nature when it comes to martial arts. And he's heavily, heavily playing on that through Goku Vegeta in a modernized way. He's doing his own spin on it. And I think it's really, really cool how he does it. He's done it multiple times throughout the series where he'll make this comparison between heaven and earth, or heaven and hell when it comes to Goku and Vegeta, because that's essentially yin and yang. Like, for example, Vegito himself, Goku comes from heaven at the beginning of the arc, and then Vegeta comes from hell, and they merge together to create Vegito. Yin and yang, heaven and hell, heaven and earth. And the scene after they fuse where Vegeta gives his speech about how Goku is number one, that's essentially very reminiscent of Sun Wukong's evil half and his good half accepting each other for who they are. Now, Vegito in Dragon Ball Super, they also do something really cool with him as well. Right before Vegeta merges with Goku in Dragon Ball Super, Vegeta gives this giant speech about Goku, right? And it's a really cool speech in both the anime and in the manga. And it really reflects the idea that he's accepted who Goku is, and he respects who Goku is, despite the fact that he does call him names. He still respects the concept and who Goku actually is. Now, that is really cool because it's essentially like a good version, a productive version of what Zamasu and Goku Black do when they fuse in comparison to Vegito. So what I mean by that is, think about it this way. Vegito is like what happened to Sun Wukong after he merged his two identities in a productive way to become the victorious fighting Buddha. Now, Zamasu is like a corrupted version of that. They're playing on the exact same thing. They're playing on, the merging of the Sixer Macaque and Sun Wukong, even with Zamasu. Zamasu was a pure-hearted, good being prior to being corrupted and becoming pure evil, and merging with Goku Black is essentially him merging with the part of himself that represents his ego, but in a counterproductive way. So it's like the exact opposite effect of what Goku and Vegeta have on each other when they fuse. Instead of Goku being there to help Vegeta tame his ego, it just adds fuel to the fire. His ego is over 9,000 at that point. Like, it's literally it's a corrupted version of what would have happened if Sun Wukong had went the other way. If he had let his ego dominate both aspects of his personality, he would have essentially become an evil, ridiculously egotistical force of nature. And Zamasu himself, again, extremely similar to Sun Wukong when he was evil. The whole killing the gods, taking over the heavens, ruling over everything. It's literally the exact same shtick. Gawasu, for example, would be like if Sun Wukong killed the little bit of good that he had left and exchanged it for darkness, right? I mean, they even hint at the fact that Zamasu and Gawasu could fuse And if they did fuse, that might be the equivalent to, Sun Wukong's character development from Journey to the West. He would become productive in a positive way rather than a negative way because he's accepted his true nature and who he actually is as a Kaioshin. In a alternate scenario where he merges with Gowasu, that's essentially what that would represent. It's like going the opposite way. Instead of merging with his ego and letting it dominate his personality, he's humbling himself like Gowasu. So Goku Black killing Gowasu is symbolic of that. Anyway, I really like the scene leading up to Vegito's introduction in the manga and in the anime, but in the manga particularly, Vegeta is reminded of his wife and his nature as an Earthling, and then decides to fuse and become Vegito. But overall, I think Vegito is a really cool concept. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.